Dull is the star once bright with grace in my heart's dark cloud. Faded is the smile from my face with no joy endowed. Justly I grieve, for though it is near, hidden to me, is the tender blossoming tree to which I cleave. In love this lovely girl outshines every other one. Her name reflects the beaming lines of Heloise the sun. She is the mirror of the sky. In her I rejoice. She is my life, my only choice, now and forever. I rue the time each day, each hour of my solitude, I who nightly pulsed with power, with such aptitude for kissing lips that breathe with spices when they part, and from which to bewitch the heart sweet cassia drips. She wastes away and is without hope of nourishment. Her youth's flower withers with drought. May this banishment in reparation be annulled, and be it guaranteed that life together will succeed this separation.
Hey y'all, I'm Erica.
And I'm Caroline. And today we're bringing you another episode of the pithy chronicle, History with a Bite.
Better than a soap opera.
Spicier than a ghost pepper.
Sexier, if possible, than Bridgerton.
Our historical retellings are guaranteed to entertain.
We're here to prove that history is just another reality show, except unscripted.
So let's open up the book and jump in. In the time it takes you to drive to work, we promise to fascinate, surprise, and enlighten you.
All you have to do is listen.
Are you hungry yet?
Today we're discussing Heloise and Abelard. Some of you may be familiar with the powerful love story between two scholars that were ripped apart by fate and resigned to monastic life while secretly burning for one another for many years to come. But boy howdy is that just the surface. I have taken the time to read the surviving letters from these two, and wow, is the story way more nuanced than a classroom romance. There is a whole underpinning of deceit, secret marriages, manipulation, and mutilation, and it is gossip any chronicler would be proud to share. With that, let's set the scene.
Oh, hold on. Let me grab my tea, put some sugar in, and go.
So Peter Abelard was born in 1079 to a knight and his wife in Brittany, which is now part of France. Thus, he was well-to-do from the start and had many professional opportunities before choosing to be a philosopher. As the firstborn son, he was expected to take his father's estates, honors, and legacy as a military man to bring distinction and glory to his family. But he rejected that role, giving up his birthright in favor of an academic life. To my dismay, and I will pontificate on why later, he was exceptionally gifted within his profession, whether it was his relatively new dialectic logic or his personality, I can't say.
Before we continue, can you help a girl out? Dialectic logic would be...
It is the most confusing thing I've ever read. So it sounds a whole lot like debate, but it is based only on facts, and there is no subjective content allowed within the realm of this debate. It sounds a little like the Socratic method to me, but I am sure there is someone who could give us a better answer. And if you check out our show notes, I will provide the definition.
Okay, that was clear as mud. Thanks so much. Got it.
Yep. Peter Abelard strikes me as a man with an overinflated ego who has little regard for others, and knowing his fate allows me some measure of satisfaction, because I have met Abelards in my time in academia, and oh my God, is it not the absolute pinnacle of pleasure to see such a man get his comeuppance, or, lack thereof.
Okay, Miss Foreshadowing, I see you there. But audience, before we continue, you must know that she is so heated right now. I I don't often wish that this was a video, but in this moment, y'all, heated. She is pissed. All right, go on. I can't wait to find out why, because I don't know.
I know. Listen, I am hot under the collar, and we are only,
we don't know anything about him yet. Help us out.
So I can't give the ending away at the beginning. That would be no fun. But what I will say about pompous windbags such as him is that they, for some godforsaken reason, do inspire a following. Abelard was no exception. People flocked to hear him speak, learn from him, and bask in his celebrity. And yes, I did say celebrity because that's what the sources call him, a full-on celebrity.
Okay, I'm just going to say that times have drastically changed when a dialectic logician is considered a celebrity. I mean, that is quite the contrast to, say, Jason Momoa. I mean, was this guy good looking? Could that explain why these people flocked to hear him lecture on such a stimulating subject?
Perhaps, but I couldn't find any records one way or another. I mean, except from him. He definitely thought that he was good looking.
I don't know that we can take that as a truth.
No, I don't think he was unbiased on the topic.
No, unbiased he is not.
When it comes to himself, he is very sure. But I digress. And I'm getting heated again. So let me move on to Heloise.
All right, bring her on.
We don't know anything.
Okay, like nothing? Nothing at all?
Okay, fine. That's not entirely true. The Encyclopedia Britannica gives her birth year as 1098, but that's debated. Tradition says she was in her mid to late teens when she met Abelard in 1116. So it doesn't exactly jive, but I feel like the Britannica knows what they're doing. So that's what I'm going to go with.
No, that's some fuzzy math there.
Either way, there was a significant age gap between our lovers.
But look at the times. So many of our queens were married off much younger with probably even more significant age gaps. I mean, we have seen some stuff.
We have seen some stuff, and certainly not unheard of for a royal dynastic marriage. But could the same be said of mutually attracted lovers?
Yes, cougars are a real thing, and I don't just mean the cats. And then there's also way too much precedent for daddy issue girls flocking to the wise older men. I mean, come on. Don't tell me you never had a thing for a professor.
I'm not playing that game. Yeah, I'm not playing that game.
Too late.
Back to the actual topic at hand.
Handsome professors? Yes, of course.
As for her parentage, we don't know much about that either. Some have cited that she was the daughter of a woman named Hersinde, speculated to have been Hyacinthe of Champagne, Lady of Montreseau, and founder of Fontevraud Abbey, or possibly a lesser-known nun called Hyacinthe at the convent of Saint Heloise, which could be the premise for the name Heloise. Not an impossible connection, but one that should be taken with a grain of salt. In Heloise's own writing, she describes herself as below Abelard in social standing, which would not be the case if she was the daughter of Hyacinthe of Champagne, because they were of the lower nobility. Unfortunately, there's not definitive proof of her origins, but we do know that her maternal uncle was Canon Fulbert at Notre Dame, and guess what?
What?
We have Abelard's description of him. Would you like to do the honors?
Of course. Abelard describes his nature, quote, Fulbert is ambitious and business-minded, stingy and greedy, irascible and vengeful, also shows criminal energy if necessary.
Not a winning depiction, is it?
No, not in the least. I don't want to be known as criminal and stingy.
No, me either.
Much less irascible. Actually, that might be the worst one.
Yeah. So here we are. We know our main players. Let's get on to the real hot goss. Peter Abelard made a name for himself because of his fiery, impassioned lectures on dialectic logic, and made enemies with almost every stinking teacher he ever came into contact with. And in the show notes, because it would take entirely too long here, I have the recorded chronology as well as links to his own writings on the topic, but for fun.
Here is one of the most damning, in my mind, excerpts that really displays his narcissistic personality. Caroline?
All right, I want to preface this by saying that Erica has requested, literally in a comment on the side, for me to do this as if I were in the show Gossip Girls, and then she just did like a little baby clap, so, The old man was beside himself with envy. Certain individuals at the school, as I've mentioned, had already turned him against me, and now they egged him on to persecute me in scriptural study, as William had done earlier in philosophy. There were 2 of the old man's students in particular. Some considered them better than the rest. Alberic of Rheims and Lotolf the Lombard, 2 whose hatred of me was matched only by their own self-infatuation. And it was largely due to their connivance, as it later came out, that the old man had the gall to forbid me from continuing my work on the gloss in a place where he was the master. But the more open it was, the more honor it brought me. Persecution only added to my fame. Okay, back to Caroline. He sounds kind of like a teenage girl, so I see what you're going with. Complaining that the other kids are picking on him because he's more gifted, I mean, it's so cliche. And that the teacher is jealous of his talents, I gotta say it's a little pathetic.
Yeah, this is how he operated. He believed the world was jealous of him. Everyone who mattered wanted to see his calamity, but above all, he was smarter and more shrewd than they could ever be.
Obviously.
The outstanding hubris and pride continually astounds me. This was his modus operandi for almost all of his 15-ish year career so far. He would take a teacher, feel like he had surpassed them, form an enmity with them, and then have a public scene. He once got so overwhelmed, he went into a short retirement for his mental health.
Now, it is exhausting to be continually amazed by oneself, and I personally need an extra hour of sleep each night to account for my own awesomeness / toddlers.
I mean, fair.
Fair.
Now, and there is no good way to bridge that, so let's go into now in 16.
What? You don't think my awesomeness needs extra sleep?
I'm just surprised you don't need 2 extra hours, Caroline.
Oh girl, keep moving.
Now in 1116, he began lodging with the Canon Fulbert, Heloise's uncle. Abelard's description of the setup was pretty damning, so I'm just going to read his own words because, listen, you give people enough rope to hang himself.
That's right.
All right. Quote, "There was in Paris a young woman by the name of Heloise. She was niece of one of the canons called Fulbert, who doted on her and did everything he could to further her education. In her looks, she was not the least of women, but in her learning, she was supreme. As a gift for learning is so rare in a woman, it..."
Okay.
Yep. Stay with me. "It added all the more to her appeal, and had already made her famous throughout the whole kingdom of France."
All right. Douchebag that he is. You have to love that he actually cared about her intelligence. That was a plus in the column of pros and cons. Because I can't say that's always the case. Sadly.
The brain is the sexiest organ.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before.
I know. It's a theme.
It's a soapbox.
It is a soapbox. But keep listening. Quote, "Having carefully considered all the things that usually serve to attract a lover, I concluded that she was the best one to bring to my bed."
Okay. Never mind. Just a douchebag.
Quote, "I was sure it would be easy. I was famous myself at the time, young and exceptionally good looking."
Modest, too. Oh my god. Well, at least we know he's good looking. I mean, he says so himself.
It says so himself, and it's not done yet. Quote, "And could not imagine that any woman I thought worthy of my love would turn me down."
No thank you.
Are you sure?
It's not my jam.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm positive.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
I think you're totally unbiased on this guy. Like, you clearly don't have an actual opinion.
I have no opinion. And I'm not done yet.
Oh, Lord. All right, go.
Quote, But I thought that this particular girl would be even more likely to give in because of her knowledge and love of letters. Through the written messages we could send one another, we could be together even when we were apart. We also could write some things to each other more boldly than we could ever speak them, and so could always be carrying on some very pleasant dialogues. I was all on fire for the girl, and I needed a way I could get to know her on a private and daily basis to win her over. I approached her uncle through some of his friends and arranged for him to take me as a lodger in his house, which was right next to the school. I would pay whatever he asked. I told him that the burdens of my own household kept me from concentrating properly on my academic work, and that, besides, it had been costing me too much.
So Abelard is giving up his own home to move in with a church canon so that he can bang his niece? Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you are right. And just wait.
Oh my gosh.
Quote, "The man had two weaknesses, his love of money and his ambitions for his niece's education. Working on both, I easily got what I wanted, while he stood there gaping after my cash and imagining how much she would learn from my instruction. On top of this, he begged, actually begged, and it was beyond anything my love could have dared to hope, to take complete charge over the girl, to spend all the time I had free from school teaching her, night and day, and not only that, but to beat her severely if I found her slacking off. The simplicity of the man just staggered me, as if he had set a ravening wolf to watch over a lamb."
The ego of this man is insane. Oh my goodness. And night and day, and to beat, oh God.
Oh, Caroline, it's not over.
What?
Quote, "When he put her in my hands not only to teach, but to discipline as well, what else was he doing but giving me complete freedom, even if I never took advantage of it, to convince her by force if more gentle inducements did not prevail?"
Oh, absolutely. I think it's quite clear that her uncle was giving Abelard permission to assault his niece if she wasn't willingly seduced. I don't know how else you could read this situation. Do you?
Fortunately, Abelard continues to explain.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
Quote,
Okay.
quote, "But two things kept him from any suspicion, his love for his niece and my solid reputation for self-restraint."
You know, I'm beginning to see your dislike of him. I'll admit at the beginning, I thought perhaps you were being a little overdramatic.
Me?
Yeah, not that you have that tendency. But now that I've read him, yeah, he's awful. And yeah, I had heard about him for many years. I mean, these two are a famous couple, a famous love story, one of the most famous of all time. Troubadours serenaded all of Europe about these two and their miraculous love. You are ruining this.
Now you know how it feels.
All right, fair play. If you haven't listened to Harem and Suleiman, you're missing out. You'll get it.
You'll understand. As there always is, there's more to the story.
I'm ready.
I'm gonna let you tell it.
I don't want to. Even reading his words feels kind of icky. All right, fine, Erica, fine. Abelard says, quote, "What more do I need to say? First, we were joined in one house, then in one heart. Under the pretext of study, we had all our time free for love, and in our classroom, all the seclusion love could ever want. With our books open before us, we exchanged more words of love than of lessons, more kisses than concepts. My hands wandered more to her breasts than to our books, and love turned our eyes to each other more than reading kept them on the page. To avert suspicion, there were some beatings, yes. What? There were some beatings, yes. It says that. This is in the text.
That's in the text.
I can do this. I can do hard things. There were some beatings, yes, but the hand that struck the blows belonged to love, not anger, to pleasure, not rage, and they surpassed the sweetness of any perfume. We left no stage of love untried in our passion, and if love could find something novel or strange, we tried that too. New at the game, we went at it with heat, and it never grew old for us. Holy crap. Okay, hold on. This is explicit. I know why you made me read this.
Yep.
And also, I do love that we can truly just use his own words to publicly hang this man. And honestly, I'm just as sure that he would describe himself as hung.
Now you may be thinking, oh gosh, this has the makings of a 90s rom-com. She's all that throwdown in the cafeteria where the leading lady yells at the hunky Freddie Prinze Jr.-esque reformed jock, am I a bet? Am I a freaking bet? You would actually be wrong.
Oh.
Yeah, don't worry. The clip is in the show notes if you don't know the reference, but it's a good one.
Girl, I know this reference. I remember begging my parents to let me go see that god-awful / absolutely amazing movie.
Oh, well.
Okay. So, it was not Am I a Bet? She was not a bet?
She was not a bet. Heloise really didn't care how Abelard came to her bed. She was just happy he was there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honest.
So, we finally get to hear from Heloise, and this is from her own writings from later in her life. Quote, do you imagine I debased myself to earn your gratitude and preserve your glorious distinction in the world? You were not so entirely oblivious when it suited your own purposes in that letter to your friend. And I did not think it beneath your dignity to set out at least some of the arguments I used when I tried to dissuade you from this marriage of ours and its disastrous bed. You kept your silence, though, about most of the reasons why I preferred love over marriage, freedom over a chain. So I call God to my witness now, if great Augustus, ruler of the world, ever thought to honor me by making me his wife, and granted me dominion over the earth, it would be dearer to me and more honorable to be called not his royal consort, but your whore. End quote.
That is a statement.
That's a full-ass statement.
It's a full-ass statement. That's a lot. I did not see that coming. So she would rather be Abelard's whore than Augustus's honorable royal wife. Okay.
Oh, yes, ma'am. It's crazy, especially for the 12th century. I can understand the sentiment, but I can never be so bold.
No, me neither. Even in today's accepting world, to consider sexual pleasure as separate from love or from marriage is daring. Though it is your life, you're likely to offend some with your actions, even if it is absolutely none of their business. But back then, it would be unheard of. And you would absolutely cause offense to many, and shame your entire family and irrevocably ruin your reputation. Whether or not it was right, the 12th century was very judgmental. Throwing conventions to the wind was sometimes dangerous, as I think will prove to be the case for these two lovers.
Too true. And this was the time when they were actively burning witches at the stake. The Middle Ages were all fire and brimstone, and not a whole lot of grace.
No.
Being a woman of letters, education, and philosophy, I can't understand how she would feel shackled by marriage.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
It is a wonderful literary choice and an achingly pulchritudinous idea, a physical attraction spurred on by a true meeting of intellectual equals. But while nice in theory, man, it couldn't be me, especially in hell-happy 12th century France.
Amen. And also, pulchritudinous. Did you really think I would let that one slip by without comment?
Listen, I'm just trying to keep up with our loquacious Abelard.
Of course you are. Okay, all right then.
I think it's clear that regardless of the premeditated nature of the romance, it was highly consensual in the context of both parties' willingness. Perhaps there could be an argument about Heloise's ability to consent because of her age or Abelard's position of authority. But on the surface, it is clear that they were in big L love. As our couple gets more comfortable, they get more sloppy. And, keeping it a secret from good old Uncle Fulbert. In fact, our unsuspecting canon walks in on them mid-act, and I can only imagine how pearl-clutchingly shocking that must have been for him. But fortunately for us, Abelard explains.
Of course he does.
No imagination necessary. Quote, it was also plain that few could have been taken in, And no one was, I think, except the man whose honor was most at stake. That is, her uncle. People would give him hints from time to time, but he could not believe them because, as I said before, he doted on his niece and trusted in my well-known self-restraint.
I'm sorry, restraint from the man that literally, planned to move in and sleep with this girl?
Mm-hmm.
That's, okay then, restraint. Sure, Abby, that's fine. I'm gonna call him Abby from now on.
Quote, "It is never easy to think ill of those we love. Suspicion cannot exist where there is great affection. As Jerome says in his letters to Castrician, we are the last to learn of the evils of our own house or the faults of our wives and children, and the first to turn a deaf ear to what all the neighbors are saying."
All right. I'm gonna say I have slight disappointment. I really thought Abby, would get into the nitty-gritty. You know, because dirty minds want to know. I also thought he would compliment himself more. I mean, honestly, not his best efforts. Even his put-downs were kind of mild, but I guess this is more like a diary entry than prose?
Kind of. So this is in epistolary style, and it's unknown whether or not this was a letter actually sent to a friend, or this was just the way he was more comfortable relating the story.
Uh-huh. Okay, he just wanted to keep it down in memoriam so that he could always remember that time that her uncle walked in on them.
This reads like a Dear Penthouse letter if ever there was one.
Yeah, okay. All right, so what happened next?
Initially, nothing that terrible.
Okay.
He simply separates them and kicks good old Abby out of the house. But that couldn't keep these guys apart, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, you know what happens next. She gets pregnant.
Oops. Not too surprising considering, what were his words? Hold on. Quote, "They left no stage of love untried in their passion, and if love could find something novel or strange, they tried that too." They were clearly quite adventurous.
And good for them.
And good for them. There was no Victorian modesty going on in this household.
Oh no.
/ dorm room, or wherever it is this was occurring.
Exactly. It does feel very dorm room-esque.
It's very college-y.
But in Heloise's later letters, which are linked in the show notes, wink wink, she actually describes quite vividly having sex in Fulbert's bed, having sex in the kitchen in a convent, also on the desk where they studied. It's pretty explicit.
Okay, so girl got around, even if it was just with one guy. Oh my God.
Yeah, but for two self-proclaimed geniuses, they didn't really seem to understand how conception worked.
Oh God, no. I'm sorry, but poor Uncle Fulbert.
Poor Uncle Fulbert. I almost think he could have managed the situation until, that is, they absconded into the night, fleeing to Abelard's mother in Brittany to await the baby. Shortly after, Astrolabe, not a joke, was born.
Not a joke.
Not a joke.
The astrolabe? Astrolabe. Really? As in, that ancient astronomical instrument that was for measuring angles, which I kind of need to look up on the internet to even remember. Astrolabe? That astrolabe?
Listen, no one to this day really knows for sure the significance of the name, but they have speculated.
They were self-important, pompous twits.
As you can imagine, Fulbert was not too happy.
Oh, he hated the name too?
Probably. He felt grossly deceived, and that his honor and possibly his intelligence had been thrown into the mud. After all, he was a subdeacon in the church, and was a wholly pious, law-abiding man from possibly the nobility. How could this possibly happen to him?
Someone get that man some smelling salts. He's going down.
I could not have said it better.
Thank you.
Ever the schemer, Abelard dramatically threw himself at Fulbert's feet upon his return to Paris and said, "I'll do anything you want. I'll even marry her."
Oh, well then sign me up. I will even marry her. How could any woman resist?
The most incredible proposal, to be sure, one to make any woman swoon. Yes. His one request was that it be a secret marriage.
Is that a thing? I'm sorry. A secret. But isn't the whole point of this marriage to show the world, oh, hey, no, it's cool. We're totally married. This baby is definitely not a bastard?
One would think.
Yeah, one would. I do.
Yeah, I do. Historians, though, debate whether or not it was his scholastic relationship with the church or the taboo of sexual involvement with a student. But whatever the reason, Fulbert agreed to this and, quote, "To seal our compact, he kissed me, all the easier to betray me later on." Abelard and Heloise were then wed.
Betray me later on. Very ominous. Although, to be fair, our Abelard, he's a bit of a drama king. But all in all, it doesn't sound like an awful solution. I know she didn't really want to be married, but surely a secret marriage better suited her. It would let her retain some of her freedoms, less chain-like, and it would make sure that their kid wasn't damned to a life of censure. It frankly seems like a good compromise.
Well, our Heloise did not agree.
Of course not.
I just want to preface that this is how Abelard remembers the situation. These are not necessarily verbatim Heloise's words. Quote, "And she asked, is this how she would be remembered, as the woman who brought my name to ruin and shamed us both? What toll should the world exact from her if she robbed it of its great light?"
Hold on, I'm sorry. Is this Abelard referring to himself as the world's great light?
Indeed, and he continues.
Of course he does.
Quote, "Could I even imagine what would follow this marriage? The censure and abuse, the tears of the philosophers and the loss to the church. What a pity it would be for me, whom nature had created for all mankind, now to become the property of one woman. Could I ever submit to this indignity? She rejected this marriage without qualification. It would be infamous and odious to me in every way," end quote. And then he grossly misinterprets a passage from the Apostle Paul, but that is a whole other issue.
I'm still hung up on this quote thing. I mean, as I said, drama king. And also, I mean, do we have any reason to believe that this was her response? So far, it's kind of just been him saying how amazing he is, obviously, and how the world would suffer if she were to submit to this indignity. But I cannot believe that any woman, much less an intelligent, deeply self-important feminist scholar, would actually say this.
This was written after the fact, so perhaps he has some justification, but I'm just going to let you read this next excerpt.
Quote, "But soon her uncle and his household, looking for some way to restore his public honor, began to spread word of the marriage, breaking every pledge he had given me. She responded by cursing him and swearing it was a barefaced lie, and he exploded with fury and fits of abuse." I mean, that is a weird reaction, frankly, from both of them. It's weird that she's so incensed. I mean, after all, it's true. And they do have a kid together. And as far as Uncle Fulbert, I mean, even if your niece does accuse you of lying when you're telling the truth, it is very ungentlemanly to scream at a lady in public. Much less hurt her. I mean, there is no excuse for that one.
And Abelard felt the same way. Probably one of the only decent things he does in this entire saga.
I would just say his life.
Yeah, in his life. Mm-hmm. And here's his response. Quote, "As soon as I heard what was happening, I took her away to an abbey of nuns in a town near Paris called Argenteuil, where she had been brought up as a small girl, and had her fitted and dressed in the garments of monastic life except for the veil. But when her uncle heard about it, he, his kinsmen, and connections thought I had come up with an easy trick to disentangle myself by making her a nun."
I actually can see how they came to that conclusion.
Quote, "Then their anger reached its peak, and they plotted their revenge. One night as I slept peacefully in an inner room of my lodgings, they bribed one of my servants to let them enter and proceeded to wreak the savage vengeance that has made the whole world shudder. They cut off the parts of my body with which I committed the wrong they complained of, and then they fled. The only two who could be caught were blinded and had their genitals cut away, including the man who, while still in my service, was led by greed to betray me."
Talk about revenge served cold. And also, not to belittle his pain, and yes, there are so many puns intended right there. But did he really just say the whole world shuddered when he lost the ability to reproduce? even for him, that is shockingly arrogant.
To even push that home a little bit more, he writes a poem that describes people lining up at his door to weep and wail his calamity.
What? No! Okay, back to that Jason Momoa comparison. If Jason Momoa was castrated because of some sort of and I'm not suggesting he should be, do not put that at my door, but if something were to happen to him, I do not think that people would run to his house and start wailing over the disaster or over the injustice.
No, but they definitely would put it on Instagram.
Yeah, there's a difference between writing something quickly and throwing it up online than leaving your house in the middle of a busy medieval workday that is toil and trouble all the way to run across town and wail at some random person's house. I'm just saying.
Is it, or is it the modern equivalent?
It is the modern equivalent, but it takes so much less effort. I don't think that we can say that it would be done as frequently.
Fair enough.
That's a rabbit hole, but I'm just saying.
It is a rabbit hole, but that's neither here nor there.
Maybe there was one woman next door that was wailing because her husband was having an affair, and he took that for being about him.
Maybe. I feel like he could make the sun shining about him.
Oh, it was, Erica. It was.
The castration is not really what you would expect as retaliation from a man of the cloth. However, before Fulbert called on his connections to maim folks, he was known to dabble in crime. It is noted that he had a slight stickiness to his fingers when it came to holy relics, and at least one was known to be in his possession.
He wasn't just a klepto, he was a holy klepto. I mean, I wonder how he justified that to himself. After all, he was a subdeacon, a holy pious man of the law. I mean, did anything happen to him?
He survived, but it couldn't have been pretty.
No, I really don't care about his manhood. No, I'm not talking about Abby. I meant Uncle Fulbert. Did anything happen to him?
Oh, no, not even a demotion.
Oh, okay. I wish I could say I was surprised, but...
After the drama, our lovers both took monastic vows. Abelard at Saint Denis and Heloise at Argenteuil. What our listeners may not expect is that this is really the beginning of their lasting love affair.
Talk about unrequited.
You are the worst.
It makes me so happy.
While they were unable to physically consummate their love, Caroline, they wrote impassioned letters to each other for the rest of their lives. Not only that, both continued to have impressively long careers. Abelard, however, was tried for heresy in 1121 at the Council of Soissons, and he was forced to burn the book in question on the Trinity himself.
Burn his book? I kind of want to hear more about this book. What was in it?
No, you don't. It is literally a book of him describing the nature of the Holy Trinity. I cannot even describe it without yawning.
Oh.
In classic Abelard style, he continued to annoy his fellow monks by, quote, letting reason, aka him, have the last word in any argument.
He really does make it hard to feel sorry for him. So I just don't. No.
My thoughts exactly. Heloise, however, excelled.
You go, girl.
While she wasn't keen to become a nun and wasn't particularly religious, her newfound status allowed her to continue her studies and write. She rose first to abbess and then to prelate nullis, which is the political equivalent of a bishop.
So she kind of surpassed Uncle.
Yeah. And Abelard, but,
And Abelard, there we go.
Hair flips abound. She was regarded as incredibly influential as well as a shrewd businesswoman. As prelate nullis, she was in charge of a region and at least 3 other, quote, daughter convents. Her writings influenced writers such as Chrétien de Troyes, Geoffrey Chaucer, Madame de Lafayette, Thomas Aquinas, Voltaire, Rousseau, Simone Weil, and Dominique Ari.
To name a few.
Exactly! She is an important figure in the establishment of women's representation in scholarship and is known for her controversial portrayals of gender and marriage, which influenced the development of modern feminism. However, there is no recorded meeting between the lovers or their son once they made their vows to the church.
So, wait a minute. What about the son? I want to know more about Astrolabe, the ridiculously named child.
We don't know much. We do know that he joined the church, and there is one surviving series of letters between Peter the Venerable and Heloise, but there's not much there.
Okay.
However, there are many surviving letters between Heloise and Abelard, proving that love is not always what we consider it to be. And it gives hopes to any singles out there. If Abelard can find great love, you can too.
That's fair enough. There's someone out there for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And with that, I'm Erica.
And I'm Caroline.
And we are pithily yours.
Tune in next week for another delicious episode.
This episode is brought to you by the Pithy Chronicle, LLC. The Pithy Chronicle is intended for education, entertainment, and non-commercial purposes. Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. While we offer lots of sarcasm, this podcast does not offer any advice or services. Listening to this podcast may induce fits of laughter, unexpected distraction, or uncontrollable rage at the subjects, hopefully not at us. We hope you learned something today. If not, so sorry. Please be advised we are not experts in the following fields: medical, legal, financial, technological, thermonuclear engineering, submarine warfare, neuroscience, or cat husbandry. Thanks for listening to our little disclaimer. Just covering our history-loving asses. Bye!